The Church in the DR Congo, A Personal Perspective. Part 3, The Missionaries. In this segment, I would like to speak about the young African missionaries who serve in the DR Congo Kinshasa mission. This photo shows a newly arrived and enthusiastic group of new missionaries and their companions following their first training meeting. It was the largest number of missionaries at one time, 24, that we had ever welcomed. Because there were so many new missionaries from English-speaking parts of Africa this time, President Birel had asked me to translate into English while he and others taught in French. Some of the new missionaries had not flown or even traveled very far from home before their missions, and described how tired and anxious they had been, having had to pass the night in the Nairobi, Kenya airport when they could neither read nor understand the language. By the time they had finished their missions, and indeed usually by the time they'd spent only a few weeks in Kinshasa, most of these bright and resourceful missionaries were confident in finding their way around any neighborhood in the city and had begun to improve their language skills. Unlike many developing areas of the world, the DR Congo sends half again more full-time missionaries than it receives. At the end of 2017, 431 full-time missionaries from throughout Africa were serving in one of three missions in the DR Congo, while 609 full-time missionaries were serving from the DR Congo. The new members converted by the teaching of these missionaries were so grateful for what the gospel had done for them that nearly all of them who were eligible wanted in turn to serve missions themselves. Many unimaginable situations arise because of the personal circumstances of these missionaries. As one example, Elder Nyonkuru, who came from Burundi, could not wear his real last name on his missionary tag. This was because, unfortunately, he happened to share the same last name as a despised ruler in his own country. There were concerns about his safety should someone think he was a close relative. Fortunately, there were no Bradshaws in powerful positions in Africa at that time. We had a chance to record oral histories on video of scores of these missionaries as they returned from their missions. Elder Nyonkuru, like many of the new converts who became missionaries, was the first and only member of the church in his family. He, like a significant percentage of other missionaries, had been pretty much on his own during his teen years. Many missionaries had been orphaned. Some, but not all, were lucky enough to be taken in by relatives or friends. The missionaries knew and loved the scriptures and had gained testimonies of the Book of Mormon, but sometimes did not have much in the way of formal learning about the gospel. Fortunately, most of them did have outstanding priesthood and auxiliary leaders, teachers, and advisors who loved them, gave them significant opportunities to serve in their callings, and held on to them through their ups and downs until their testimonies became vibrant and unshakable. While the personal ministering of friends will always be key to the preparation and strengthening of new members, an increasing number of the rising generation of missionaries will become even stronger through the blessing of seminary, institute, and formal mission preparation classes. One evening, Kathleen and I drove down a small dirt road to visit John and Guylaine Koyengule, one of the families to whom I ministered. The neighborhood kids were always very accommodating whenever my companion, Justin Sandstrom, and I temporarily broke up their soccer game as we parked the car. John and Guylaine Koyengule are the faithful parents of faithful children, consisting of 2 sons and 2 daughters. At the time of the photo, Guylaine was in the Stake Relief Society presidency, while John served on the High Council. The parents have never been endowed nor sealed in the temple to each other and to their family because John's employment with the military prohibits them from traveling outside the country, and the nearest temple is located in Johannesburg, South Africa. John's sister, who he taught and baptized, his only other family member in the church, is shown in back, second from the right. Tragically, to the shock of family and friends, she passed away suddenly not long after this photo was taken, due to inadequate medical care while visiting her mother in a rural part of the Congo. The home of this faithful family was modest, but warmed each visitor with the unmistakable glow of a missionary training center. At the time of the photo, 1 son and 1 daughter were serving missions. The daughter, shown second from left, had recently returned from her mission and was looking for work as a seamstress. The son at far left was finishing school and preparing for his mission. The blessings of the Koyengule's home-based missionary training center were not limited to their family alone, but had been extended to scores of others. In addition to his calling as a high counselor, John had been teaching seminary in his home for 7 years straight, 5 nights a week. While children played soccer on the street, these youth walked to John and Guylain's home for a ward seminary class every night at 6 p.m. after school. A second ward seminary class met in another home. Though the glow of the spirit in the classroom was palpable, this photo gives a realistic idea of the physical darkness inside the classroom. Later photos of the class will appear lighter than they actually appeared because I cranked open the camera lens. Partway through the class, the natural light coming in through the door and window suddenly disappeared. In countries situated near the equator, there is no such thing as dusk. When the sun sets, the sky goes black. In the far end of the family living space, a light bulb continued to burn bravely. Kathleen and I were glad to have our phones with us, as it was still too dark for us to read from a physical book. Our lesson was Mormon 3 and 4. John taught from his phone, and the students read from paperback copies of the Book of Mormon. William, at left, has albinism, a genetic condition we saw regularly in the DR Congo. A small electric fan did little to dispel the heat and humidity, but the students were unfazed. The preparation these students receive in seminary will prepare many of them to become capable missionaries, teachers, and parents. In large wards like ours, young adult men and women were able to attend Institute. The many who were preparing for full-time missions were usually called as ward missionaries, like those shown here. They helped organize and conduct baptisms, taught and participated in gospel principles, fellowshipped investigators and new members, and accompanied the full-time missionaries in their finding and teaching. We gladly accepted the assignment from our bishop, Emi Ngoy, to teach the temple preparation class to Oscar Ilulu and Jeremy Bienzi. Later, they would receive their temple blessings at the temple near the Missionary Training Center in Ghana. We celebrated their graduation by posing with a Lego model of the Kinshasa temple built by our son Samuel. We teased our friends at the temple construction site that Samuel had managed to construct his Kinshasa temple ahead of schedule and under budget. Elder Ed and Sister Chris Gates, who served as temple construction missionaries, invited us to join them for the daily devotional of temple construction workers at the Kinshasa temple construction site. This was the day that Jeremy was scheduled to open his mission call. The construction crew that day numbered a few dozen men and one intrepid woman who can be seen to the left of center. Before Jeremy opened his call, the temple construction crew sang, "Called to Serve."
Appelez à servir notre Père, à témoigner toujours à son nom. Son histoire composera la terre, son grand amour proclamons. Allons tous en avant, pour la gloire de son nom. Allons tous en avant, pour la gloire de son nom. Allons toujours plus loin, notre chant s'élèvera. Dieu nous aidera, toujours en avant, servant notre roi.
Jeremy's hard work and diligence as a student of English and the leader of the ward English class would now be put to good use as he was called to serve in the Zimbabwe Harare mission. Jeremy's bishop, Dieu Merci, who also worked at the temple site, immediately reviewed the call letter and documents with him. After finishing his training at the Ghana MTC, Jeremy had to be sent back to Kinshasa while he waited for his visa to arrive. He sent a message to us last week that he had finally received his visa and was scheduled to leave for Zimbabwe in 3 weeks. One of our missionaries, Sister Toku, spent most of her mission in the home country of Ivory Coast, waiting for a visa. Elder Luzi Adio, a missionary from the DR Congo, spent the several months he waited for his visa serving as a full-time missionary in his hometown of Kinshasa, much of the time in his very own neighborhood. We have dreamed for the day when a missionary training center could be organized in Kinshasa. Such a center would reduce the waiting time and expense of many Central African missionaries who now have to obtain visas and fly to Ghana for training. At the request of the mission president, Kathleen made a map showing the countries of origin for each of the missionaries. Typically, senior couples come from North America and Europe. President Barrel, our mission president, was from France, but currently 2 of the 3 DR Congo missions are led by Congolese mission presidents. Although other missions in Africa include a mix of African and non-African full-time missionaries, so far as we've been able to discover, the DR Congo is the only African country where the young missionaries are exclusively from Africa. The largest number are from the DR Congo and the Ivory Coast, but the rest usually come from a dozen or so countries, both French and English-speaking. Sisters Jimmy Abioye and Razana Drakoto exemplify the diverse countries of origin of the young missionaries. They had just returned from a medical exam required to get their long-term visas. Sister Jimmy, at left, is from the Republic of Congo-Brazzaville. Sister Abioye, in the middle, is from Nigeria. Sister Razana Drakoto, at right, is from Madagascar. The mix of English and French-speaking African missionaries in the mission is deliberate, permitting French speakers to learn English and vice versa. One of Kathleen's duties was to supervise their progress in the mission's English program and to administer an online test that could confer university credit on those who scored well. In this photo of departing missionaries, Elder Ngus, an assistant to the president, proudly holds the English certificate that he had been awarded after working for many months. Despite the diversity of languages and cultures, most missionary companions got along superbly. With encouragement from reminders like these posted on their apartment walls: never criticize leaders, love my companion, always smile, always be positive, don't say bad things about others. Of course, not every young missionary was 100% what he or she should have been 100% of the time. A few of them did things that brought about frustration, heartache, and serious tragedy, even when these same missionaries were so dedicated, so good, so kind, so considerate, and so charming so much of the time. You couldn't help but love them. The young missionaries loved being around Kathleen as much as I did. Many had grown up lacking one or both of their parents. When these bright sisters, or for that matter elders, slammed the entry door as they came to do business at the mission office, they often called out, Sister Bradshaw, as they trekked down the hallways. Each one of these sisters was different, a one-of-a-kind individual in her own right, with the unique contribution the Lord expects her to make. Yet each one also carries a special spirit common to all missionaries. I've always been struck with the truth of a statement by the philosopher William James, who wrote, quote, there is very little difference between one person and another, but what little there is very important. Sister Jimmy and Sister Dekaye served as sister trainer leaders, or STLs. Their role was similar in some ways to the 2 elders who served as assistants to the mission president. Note the matching clothes and gestures of these 2 sisters, an outward expression of their unity and love for each other. The sisters and elders in our mission had superb training and instruction from President and Sister Birel in their council meetings. Both of them were seasoned church leaders, and President Birel had served for many years with the Seminary and Institute program. It was also a blessing that Sister Birel was a professionally trained and experienced nurse. One of the things that impressed us most about the Birels is how they managed to spend so much time with the missionaries outside of scheduled meetings. Wherever possible, they accompanied the missionaries into their assigned neighborhoods for teaching appointments, and they seemed to be almost constantly on the phone or visiting various missionaries in order to minister to them in one-by-one fashion. After finishing their business that day, the missionaries practiced a beautiful song composed by Elders Lokpo and Mukaz entitled Marchons vers le Temple, Let Us Walk Toward the Temple. The missionaries varied greatly in their education and experience. For the benefit of those who had never lived so well nor handled so much money as they did during their mission, it was important that President and Sister Birel teach them basic budgeting and accounting skills that would serve them the rest of their lives. This also entailed teaching them about the sacred nature of the funds for their necessities they received from donations of church members around the world, and for which the Lord had given them individual stewardship. As financial secretary for the mission, one of my responsibilities was to distribute and track the funds the missionaries received for personal needs and transportation. None of the young missionaries drove a car. For everything out of walking distance, they had to rely on relatively expensive and sometimes unreliable public fleet of hired vehicles. The forms of public transportation varied widely. This beautiful public bus was cheerfully decorated with the painting of happy citizens under a banner proclaiming Esprit de vie, meaning spirit of life. On the other hand, a more common form of transportation was these broken down and often overloaded minivans that were jokingly called Esprit de mort, spirit of death. This process of tracking missionary needs and expenses could be tedious and time-consuming, sometimes involving transactions in Congolese francs that amounted only to a few cents in US dollars. Because of the large number of Congolese bills it takes to handle ordinary transactions, most business in the Congo is performed in US dollars. Until fairly recently, Congolese missions distributed allotments for food and transportation to missionaries every few weeks using large suitcases full of Congolese bills. In the Republic of Congo-Brazzaville mission, office staff had to carry such suitcases with them as they flew to outlying areas where some of the missionaries worked. Eventually, most missions converted to a system where money could be distributed over cell phones. In our mission, we worked closely with a very patient and hard-working brother named Mark Andromedus in Salt Lake City to convert to a debit card system. The debit card system generally worked for the missionaries, at least during the blessed times when the ATMs had both a decent network connection and also enough cash in them to make a withdrawal. The missionaries who made the greatest sacrifices to earn their part of the funding required for their missions usually felt the deepest responsibility for how they handled and spent the funds they received. One example of sacrifice and hard work in mission preparation is Elder Cedric Chambwe, an outstanding missionary who served as assistant to the president, shown here with his equally outstanding companion, Elder Mutuale. This video tells part of the story of how Elder Chambwe prepared financially for his mission.
My name is Cedric Chambwe. I live in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm a member of the LDS Church. I'm a branch missionary at the village of Kupusanga. I need to prepare to go on a foreign mission. In order to go on the mission, I need a passport, which now costs $250 US. To earn money, my father and I buy bananas. Some villages produce a lot of bananas. Teshibobo, Lusuku, and Kamanda. Teshibobo is about 9 miles from here. Lusuku is 18 miles. Kamanda is 18 as well. We go there and buy bananas, and we bring them back here to sell. To go to the village, we use a bicycle. We can take 4 or 6 bunches of bananas. When I go by bike, it can take an hour and a half each way, if the bike is working and I have the strength. When it is midday and the heat is oppressive, we move slowly because of the heat and the sun. I can do 2 trips per day if I wake up very early in the morning. It is a good way to help pay for my passport. And now I'm earning money, little by little. So I'm saving for both school expenses and the mission. And now, after 4 years of work, I have enough money for my passport, plus $70 saved.
Another important area of training by President Birel was to help ensure that new members were warmly received and received opportunities for church service after their baptism. He emphasized that a great part of that responsibility fell on the missionaries themselves. These teachings were especially important in areas where many new members might be coming into the same ward at the same time. For example, this exceptional photo shows Elder Zeke and his companion with 16 new members they taught and eventually baptized on the same day in the Limete ward. President Don Livingstone, a former president of the DR Congo Kinshasa mission, tells the story of an interview he had with the Sister Kayembe at the end of her mission, before she returned to her home in Lubumbashi, a large city in the south of the DR Congo. He asked her how many people she had seen receive her testimony of the gospel during her mission. She said, 56. He asked, how are they all doing? And she replied that 54 of the 56 were active. Somewhat surprised by the precision of her answer, he asked, really, how do you know that? And she said, on my preparation days, I took some of my food money and I went to a public telephone, and I either called them or wrote to them. Then she said, I've been in contact with all of them, and I know that 54 of them are still active. Before closing this presentation, we'll take a look at where and how the young missionaries live. One of our duties was to help with regular apartment inspections, delivering supplies and making sure everything in the apartment was clean and in working order. We tried to make these visits one each transfer, which meant every 6 weeks. President and Sister Birel would visit half the apartments, and Kathleen and I would visit the other half. It generally took the better part of 2 days for each of the couples. We loved seeing the missionaries in their home turf, though the travel down bumpy dirt roads and through long mud holes was wearying. Because we visited on preparation day, the missionaries were usually in casual dress so they could finish their morning chores. Most of the missionaries lived in rented houses. These were very large by Congolese standards, suitable for at least 2 or 3 sets of missionaries. For security reasons, the compounds were entered through large locked metal gates. The compounds were surrounded by high walls, often topped with barbed wire. These sisters had been cleaning the front steps when we arrived. The steep steps were a hazard. One of the sisters slipped and fell just as we got there and had to walk to a local clinic for treatment. Access to the lodgings themselves could also be hazardous. These kind missionaries were true gentlemen who helped us scramble up the hill. I liked the feeling of order in this study area in the bedroom of 2 elders. Note the moustiquaire, mosquito netting, over the bed in the background, and the fan that was pointed at close range toward the bed. If the missionaries came down with malaria, the mission paid their medical expenses, but President Birel docked them $10 personally, under the assumption that if they had been taking their dose of doxycycline each day and taking other basic precautions, they would have never gotten sick. The number of malaria cases went down as missionaries became more careful. Because we had good screens on our apartment window, we did not sleep under a mosquito net, but we did take doxycycline each day. With the exception of 1 day each when we had the sniffles, we were perfectly healthy during the 2 years we served on this mission. To test my health, I lifted a homemade barbell that the missionaries had made for exercise. A missionary kindly stood behind me, worried that he might need to catch me if I fell over. Due in part to Kathleen's encouragement, some of the rented houses were replaced by apartment buildings. This made it feasible to reduce the number of missionaries in each residence and reduce frequent repair costs by putting the responsibility for ensuring electricity and water on the landlord rather than on the mission. Most of the missionaries were accustomed to cooking outside. These missionaries were preparing a birthday lunch of pondu, made from manioc leaves laboriously crushed in a mortar. Various spices and other vegetables were added before it was boiled. This missionary is cooking fufu, a Congolese staple that serves about the same function as do mashed potatoes in many other parts of the world. Fufu is made from the flour of a mix of boiled and ground, starchy vegetables, such as cassava, corn, or plantain. Many people grind their own flour, a laborious process. The fufu itself is rather bland, so it is the variety of different kinds of sauces that add flavor and interest. Although fufu is eaten in most West and Central African countries, the palates and digestive systems of non-Congolese missionaries sometimes take a while to adapt to the amount of fufu typically consumed by the Congolese missionaries. Some of the apartments have a hot plate, but that's not always practical given the unreliable electricity in many neighborhoods. Some missionaries used to have cookers powered by bottles of gas, but that proved to be dangerous. So during the time we served, nearly all the missionaries had large bags of locally made charcoal regularly delivered to them for cooking. Here Elder Swaswa fries a brace of Thompson fish in a pan, boils fufu in a pot, and prepares sorrel leaves as an accompaniment. The French word for sorrel, oseille, is sometimes used as slang for money, since its leaves are round like coins. Oh, how we love these missionaries. Sometimes before we left the apartments, they would sing to us. There is much we can learn from their devotion, spirituality, enthusiasm, and faith. All these qualities are captured in this rousing rendition of Let Us All Press On.
Divers comme marche avec armée de vérité. Regardez, voici nos ennemis, soyons courageux, nous avons Jésus-Christ devant eux. Jamais nous ne céderons au Seigneur, c'est nous obéirons. Si nous choisissons le bien et que pour l'affronter, nous soyons vraiment pleins d'adversité, le vrai soutien, le rôle de vérité. Regardez, voici nos ennemis, soyons courageux, nous avons Jésus-Christ devant eux. Jamais nous ne céderons au Seigneur, seul nous obéirons.